Aliens declare war. Humans treat it as a training exercise. Part 1. The Declaration. The Velthari Empire had ruled the stars for over 3,000 years. They had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed every species that stood in their way. Their massive warships were feared across the entire galaxy. No one had ever defeated them. No one had even come close. High Commander Zorath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest. He was tall, even by Velthari standards. His dark exoskeleton gleamed under the ship's lights. His 4 eyes stared at the blue planet on the main screen. Earth, the home of the humans. "Begin the transmission," Zorath ordered. His communications officer obeyed. The message would reach every corner of Earth within seconds. Zorath had delivered this same message to many worlds before. He knew exactly what would happen next. The humans would panic. Their leaders would beg for mercy. Some would try to fight, but it would be useless. It was always useless. Zorath spoke in a deep, commanding voice. "People of Earth, I am High Commander Zorath of the Velthari Empire. Your world now belongs to us. You have 2 choices. Surrender and serve the Empire, or resist and be destroyed. You have 1 rotation of your planet to decide. This is not a negotiation. This is a fact." The transmission ended. Zorath turned to his tactical officer. "How long until their leaders respond?" "Based on previous conquests, I estimate 2 to 3 hours, Commander. They usually spend the first hour in denial." Zorath nodded. He had seen this pattern many times. First came the shock. Then came the fear. Then came the desperate attempts to fight, and finally came the surrender. It was always the same. But Earth was about to be very different. Admiral Patricia Walsh was sitting in her office at Earth Defense Command when the alien transmission arrived. She was 54 years old, with short gray hair and sharp brown eyes. She had spent 30 years in the military. She had seen many strange things in her career, but this was new. Her aide, Lieutenant Amy Brooks, rushed into the office. Amy was young, only 26, but she was smart and calm under pressure. That was why Patricia had chosen her. "Admiral, did you see the transmission?" Amy asked. Patricia took a slow sip of her coffee. "I saw it." "What do we do?" Patricia set down her mug and smiled. It was not the smile of someone who was afraid. It was the smile of someone who had just received very good news. "Get me General Kevin Moore on a secure line and tell the fleet commanders to report to their stations." Amy hesitated. "Admiral, they have 800 warships. They're positioned near Jupiter. Our entire fleet is only 300 vessels." "I know," Patricia said. "That's why this is going to be so much fun." Amy stared at her. "Fun. We've been running training exercises for years, Lieutenant. Simulations, war games, practice battles. The crews are getting bored. They need a real challenge." Patricia stood up and stretched. "Well, now they have one." Within 1 hour, Patricia was in a video conference with the top military leaders of Earth. General Kevin Moore appeared on her screen. He was a large man with a bald head and a thick beard. He had commanded ground forces for 20 years before moving to Space Command. "Patricia," Kevin said, grinning, "please tell me you're thinking what I'm thinking." "I'm thinking we cancel the scheduled exercises and use these aliens instead." Kevin laughed. It was a loud, genuine laugh. "I love it. What do we know about them?" Colonel Maria Santos, the head of military intelligence, shared her screen. She had spent the last hour analyzing every piece of data they could find about the Velthari. "They're impressive," she admitted. "Large fleet, advanced weapons, plasma-based cannons with significant destructive power." "But?" Patricia asked. She could hear the hesitation in Maria's voice. "But they're predictable. I pulled their historical records from the transmissions they broadcast. They've used the same battle formations for the last 300 years, the same tactics, the same strategies. They haven't changed anything because they've never needed to. Every species they've fought either surrendered immediately or threw everything at them in one desperate attack. Kevin leaned forward. So they've never fought a prolonged war against an enemy that adapts? Never, Maria confirmed. They have no experience with it. Patricia nodded slowly. Then we give them that experience. Kevin, mobilize the fleet. Tell the commanders this is Operation Live Fire. Standard rotation protocols. I want every crew to get some action. Rotation protocols? Maria asked. We're going to rotate crews during a war? It's not really a war, Patricia said. It's a training exercise. The aliens just don't know it yet. On the carrier Relentless, Sergeant Ryan Cole gathered his squad in the briefing room. Ryan was 32 years old, a veteran of countless simulations and exercises. He had always wondered what real combat would feel like. Now, he was about to find out. His squad was young. Most of them had graduated from training less than a year ago. Private Tony Martinez was the youngest at 22. He looked nervous, and Ryan could not blame him. All right, listen up, Ryan said. You've all seen the alien transmission. Big scary bugs want to conquer Earth. Any questions so far? Tony raised his hand. Sarge, are we going to be okay? They've never lost a war. Ryan smiled. That's because they've never fought us. Think about it. They've been beating up on peaceful species who forgot how to fight. We're different. We've been fighting each other since we lived in caves. We have military schools dedicated to studying wars that happened thousands of years ago. We run simulations against imaginary enemies just in case we ever meet them. He paused and looked at each member of his squad. These aliens think they're predators. They think we're prey. But they're wrong. We're the most dangerous species in this galaxy, and they just made the mistake of knocking on our door. Tony still looked uncertain. But what if they're stronger than us? Strength isn't everything, Ryan replied. Adaptability is. The ability to learn and change. We do that better than anyone. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to go out there, we're going to study how they fight, and then we're going to take them apart piece by piece. And we're going to have a good time doing it. The squad was quiet for a moment. Then Private Susan Park, a small woman with quick reflexes and a sharp mind, grinned. So basically, this is a live training exercise? Ryan nodded. Exactly. Now let's go show these bugs what humans can do. Across the fleet, similar conversations were happening. Commanders briefed their crews. Pilots checked their fighters. Engineers tested their systems. But there was no fear. There was no panic. There was only anticipation. High Commander Zorath waited for the human response. He expected tears. He expected begging. Instead, after exactly 2 hours, he received a short message from Admiral Patricia Walsh. The message was simple. Thank you for volunteering. We accept. See you soon. Zorath stared at the message. He did not understand it. Volunteering? What did that mean? He turned to his tactical officer. Are they mocking us? I do not know, Commander. This response does not match any pattern in our records. Zorath's mandibles clicked in irritation. No matter. They will learn to fear us soon enough. Prepare the fleet for battle. But deep in his mind, in a place he did not want to acknowledge, Zorath felt something he had never felt before. It was small, barely noticeable. But it was there. It was doubt. Aliens declare war. Humans treat it as a training exercise. Part 2. First Contact. The Velthari fleet moved toward Earth like a dark cloud crossing the sky. 800 warships flew in perfect formation. They had used this same formation for 3 centuries. It had never failed them. High Commander Zorath stood at the center of his bridge, watching the tactical display. His officers worked silently around him. They were confident. They were always confident. Victory was not a question. It was a certainty. The human fleet has been detected, his sensor officer reported. 300 vessels. They are emerging from behind Mars. Zorath allowed himself a small smile. 300 against 800. The humans were brave, he had to admit. Foolish, but brave. "What formation are they using?" Zorath asked. The sensor officer paused. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly. "I am not certain, Commander. They appear to be spreading out in a random pattern." "Random? That makes no sense. Show me." The tactical display zoomed in on the human fleet. Zorath studied it carefully. The officer was right. The human ships were not forming any recognizable pattern. They moved loosely, almost casually, as if they were not heading into battle at all. "Perhaps they have no military training," Zorath suggested. "Perhaps they are simply disorganized." "Perhaps," his tactical officer agreed, but he did not sound convinced. Aboard the carrier Relentless, Commander Daniel Carter stood at the center of his own bridge. He was 45 years old, with calm gray eyes and a relaxed posture. Next to him stood Dr. Lisa Grant, the ship's chief science officer. Lisa was 38, with red hair and a brilliant mind for patterns and analysis. "Report," Daniel said. "The Velthari are in standard formation," Lisa replied. "The same one they used in their last 12 recorded battles. Their weapons are charging in sequence, which means they will fire in synchronized volleys." Daniel nodded. "Predictable. Very predictable. Their ships are also maintaining fixed distances from each other. They are not adjusting based on our movements. So if we change position, they won't respond quickly." "Correct. Their doctrine appears to rely on overwhelming force and rigid discipline. They expect enemies to either run or attack head-on." Daniel smiled. "Then we do neither. Open a channel to the fleet." His communications officer complied. Daniel's voice went out to every ship in the human fleet. "All commanders, this is Carter. Begin Exercise Crimson. Standard protocols apply. Rotate squadrons every 4 hours. I want clean recordings of everything for training analysis. And remember, these are real weapons, so keep your heads on straight. Carter out." Captain Laura Kim commanded the destroyer Swift Strike. She was one of the most experienced pilots in the fleet. When she heard Daniel's orders, she grinned and turned to her crew. "You heard the man. This is a training exercise. Let's show these new recruits how it's done." Her crew cheered. The Swift Strike accelerated forward, weaving between the other human ships with practiced ease. The two fleets closed the distance. The Velthari fired first, as they always did. 800 ships released synchronized plasma volleys. The space between the fleets lit up with deadly green energy. But the human ships were not there. They had moved. Not in formation, not in any predictable pattern, but individually, each ship following its own path based on its captain's instincts and training. The plasma bolts passed through empty space, hitting nothing but distant stars. Zorath stared at his display. What happened? "Why did none of our shots connect?" "They moved, Commander, all of them, at the last moment." "That is impossible. No fleet can coordinate such movement without a central command structure." But the evidence was right in front of him. The humans had not only dodged his attack, they were now counter-attacking. Railgun rounds tore through space at incredible speeds. They did not travel in synchronized volleys. Each ship fired independently, targeting different Velthari vessels. The first Velthari ship exploded, then another, then 5 more. "Return fire," Zorath commanded. "All ships, target the human vessels." The Velthari fired again. Once more, their plasma bolts flew in perfect synchronized waves. Once more, the humans simply moved out of the way. It was like trying to swat insects that could see the future. On the Relentless, Sergeant Ryan Cole watched the battle from the ship's observation deck. His squad was gathered around him, their eyes wide with amazement. "Look at that," Private Tony Martinez whispered. "They're missing everything." Ryan nodded. "Their weapons are powerful, but they're too predictable. They fire in patterns. If you know the pattern, you can avoid the shots." "How do we know the pattern?" Because they've been using the same one for 300 years, our analysts figured it out in about 2 hours. Private Susan Park laughed. So they never change? That seems stupid. It's not stupid if it always works, Ryan explained. They've never fought anyone who could learn fast enough to exploit their weaknesses. Every other species they conquered either surrendered or died before they could figure out the pattern. We're different. We study our enemies. We adapt. We overcome. The battle continued. Within 11 minutes, 40 Velthari ships had been destroyed. The humans had lost none. Zorath could not believe what he was seeing. His perfect formation was falling apart. His ships were dying, and the humans were not even trying hard. He could see it in the way they moved. They were not desperate. They were not panicked. They were comfortable. "Commander," his second-in-command said quietly, "what are your orders?" Zorath did not answer immediately. He was watching a single human ship, a small destroyer that was weaving through his fleet like a fish through water. It was destroying his vessels with precise economical shots, never wasting a single round. "Pull back," Zorath finally ordered. "All ships, retreat to rally point 7. The order went out. The Velthari fleet began to withdraw, but the humans did not pursue aggressively. They followed at a distance, almost lazily, picking off stragglers but not pressing their advantage. Commander Daniel Carter watched the Velthari retreat and nodded with satisfaction. "Good first engagement. Record all data and prepare analysis reports. I want every captain to review the footage before the next rotation." His first officer, Lieutenant Commander Mark Davis, looked confused. "Sir, why aren't we pursuing? We have them on the run." "Because this is a training exercise," Daniel replied. "If we destroy them too quickly, our other crews won't get any practice. Besides, I want to see if they learn anything from this engagement. If they adapt, things might get interesting. And if they don't adapt?" Daniel shrugged. "Then we finish this whenever we feel like it." High Commander Zorath sat alone in his quarters that night. His fleet had lost 40 ships in 11 minutes. He had lost none in his previous 8 campaigns, not a single one. He pulled up the human ship movements on his personal display. He watched them again and again. They moved like nothing he had ever seen. Each ship was independent, yet somehow they all worked together. There was no central command giving orders for every maneuver. The humans trusted each individual captain to make decisions in real time. It was chaos. But it was also beautiful. Zorath had conquered 17 star systems by following the same rules, the same tactics, the same strategies that his ancestors had developed centuries ago. He had never questioned them because they had never failed. Until now. He opened a communication channel to the Empire. "This is High Commander Zorath. I am requesting additional tactical advisors. The humans are not fighting according to any known patterns. We need to develop new strategies." The response came within minutes. It was not what he hoped for. "Request denied. The Empire does not change tactics for inferior species. Continue the conquest as planned." Zorath closed the channel and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in his long career, he wondered if the Empire might be wrong. Aliens declare war. Humans treat it as a training exercise. Part 3. The Learning Curve. 1 week had passed since the first battle. The Velthari fleet had been reduced from 800 ships to 512. The humans had lost 7 ships total, and 2 of those losses were due to mechanical failures rather than enemy fire. General Kevin Moore sat in the war room at Earth Defense Command, reviewing the latest reports. Admiral Patricia Walsh sat across from him, drinking her 3rd cup of coffee of the morning. "This is almost disappointing," Kevin admitted. "I was hoping they would adapt by now." Patricia nodded. "Their command structure is too rigid. They request permission for every tactical change, and by the time the permission arrives, the situation has already changed." "How long do you think they can keep this up?" At current losses, maybe 2 more weeks before their fleet is completely destroyed. But I don't want to destroy them completely. That's wasteful. Kevin raised an eyebrow. You have a plan? I always have a plan. On the front lines, the war had become something strange. The human crews were treating it exactly like a training exercise. They rotated shifts. They held after-action reviews. They even gave scores to different squadrons based on their performance. Sergeant Ryan Cole had developed a game with his squad. They called it pattern prediction. Before each engagement, they would try to guess exactly what the Velthari ships would do. After 1 week of battles, they were getting very good at it. Okay, next target, Ryan said, pointing at a Velthari cruiser on their tactical screen. Susan, what's your prediction? Private Susan Park studied the cruiser's position. They'll turn port side 30 degrees and fire a plasma volley in exactly 4 seconds. They watched. The Velthari cruiser turned port side 30 degrees. It fired a plasma volley. Exactly 4 seconds. Susan pumped her fist. That's 15 points for me. Private Tony Martinez laughed. This is starting to feel unfair. Ryan nodded seriously. It is unfair, but that's not our fault. We didn't make them predictable. We just learned how to read them. The humans had developed detailed profiles for every type of Velthari ship. They knew the firing patterns. They knew the turning speeds. They knew how long it took for Velthari captains to react to unexpected situations. The answer was usually too long. Meanwhile, on the Velthari flagship, High Commander Zorath was experiencing something his species had never developed a word for. It was a mix of frustration, confusion, and a growing sense of helplessness. His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Yelthi, entered his quarters with a data pad. Yelthi was younger than Zorath, and she had begun to question things that Zorath had always accepted as truth. Commander, I have completed my analysis of human history, Yelthi said. Show me. Yelthi transferred the data to Zorath's main screen. Images appeared. Battles, wars, conflicts stretching back thousands of years. The humans have been fighting each other for their entire existence, Yelthi explained. They have fought over territory, over resources, over ideas, over things that make no logical sense. They never stopped fighting. Zorath studied the images. He saw primitive weapons, swords and spears, then more advanced weapons, guns and bombs, then even more advanced weapons, missiles and nuclear devices, and finally the weapons they faced now, railguns and energy shields and ships that moved like dancers. Each war made them better, Yelthi continued. They studied their mistakes. They learned from their enemies. They developed new tactics and new technologies. They have military academies devoted to studying battles that happened thousands of years ago. Why? Zorath asked. If the battle is over, why study it? Because they want to understand it. They believe that every battle contains lessons. They collect these lessons and teach them to their young warriors. When a new enemy appears, they search their history for similar situations and apply the lessons they learned. Zorath felt cold. We are not new to them. No, Commander, we are not. When we declared war, their analysts began studying our historical records. Within hours, they had identified our patterns. Within days, they had developed counter-strategies. They treated us like a puzzle to be solved. And they solved us. Yelthi hesitated. Yes, Commander. They solved us in less than 1 week. Zorath stood and walked to his window. Outside, he could see the remnants of his once mighty fleet. Ships that had never known defeat were now scarred and damaged. Crews that had always been confident were now afraid. Why have they not destroyed us? He asked quietly. I do not know, Commander. They have the advantage. They could end this war whenever they choose. But they do not choose. Why? Yelthi had no answer. The answer came the next day in the form of a human prisoner. During a small skirmish, A Velthari patrol ship had managed to capture a damaged human fighter. The pilot, a young woman named Lieutenant Jenny Ross, was brought before Zorath for interrogation. Jenny was 28 years old with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. She did not look afraid. She looked curious. "You are a prisoner of war," Zorath informed her. "You will answer our questions." "Sure," Jenny said. "I've got nothing to hide." Zorath was surprised by her casual tone. Prisoners usually begged or threatened or cried. This human did none of those things. "Why does your fleet not press its advantage?" Zorath asked. "You could destroy us, yet you hold back. Explain." Jenny tilted her head. "You really don't understand, do you?" "Explain," Zorath repeated more firmly. "Okay." Jenny leaned back in her chair. "This isn't really a war to us. It's more like practice, training. Our crews need real combat experience, and you're providing it. If we destroy you too quickly, the training ends. So we're taking our time." Zorath's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "You are using us for training?" "Pretty much, yeah. Every engagement is recorded, every tactic is analyzed, new crews rotate in so everyone gets experience. It's actually a great learning opportunity for our junior officers." "This is impossible. We are the Velthari Empire. We have conquered 17 star systems. We are not training dummies." Jenny shrugged. "I mean, no offense, but you kind of are. Your tactics are 300 years old. You don't adapt. You don't improvise. You just do the same thing over and over. It's like fighting a very large, very slow punching bag." Zorath felt something he had never felt before. It was not anger. It was not fear. It was embarrassment. "Take her away," he ordered. Jenny was escorted to a holding cell. As she left, she called back over her shoulder. "You know, you guys could learn from this too. That's what we would do. We would study our defeat and figure out how to do better next time. Just a thought." The door closed behind her. Zorath stood in silence. Yelthi approached carefully. "Commander, she may have a point. Perhaps we should analyze our failures and attempt new strategies." "The Empire does not change strategies," Zorath replied automatically. But the words felt hollow. They had always felt true before. Now, they felt like chains. "Commander," Yelthi said quietly, "if we do not change, we will be destroyed. Perhaps the Empire's rules do not apply when the Empire is losing." Zorath turned to face her. For the first time in his career, he saw doubt in his own reflection. But behind the doubt, he saw something else. A small spark. A possibility. "Call a meeting of all remaining captains," he said. "Perhaps it is time we learned something new." Yelthi nodded and hurried away. On the Relentless, Commander Daniel Carter received a report about the captured pilot. He smiled when he heard what Jenny had said to the Velthari commander. "That's Jenny for you," he said. "Always teaching even as a prisoner." His first officer looked concerned. "Should we attempt a rescue?" "Not yet. Let's see what the Velthari do next. If they're smart, they'll start learning from their mistakes. If they do that, this might actually become interesting." "And if they don't?" Daniel shrugged. "Then we finish the exercise and go home. Either way, our crews are getting excellent training. The admirals will be happy." Far away, in her holding cell, Lieutenant Jenny Ross was doing exactly what any human would do in her situation. She was studying her captors, learning their patterns, looking for weaknesses, because that was what humans did. They learned, they adapted, they survived. And when the time was right, they won. Aliens declare war. Humans treat it as a training exercise. Part 4. The Turning Point. 2 weeks had passed since the war began. The Velthari fleet had been reduced to 243 ships. The humans had lost 11. The numbers told a story that High Commander Zorath could not ignore any longer. Something had to change. The meeting with his remaining captains had been difficult. For 3 hours they had argued about tradition, about honor, about the way things had always been done, but Zorath had shown them the data. He had shown them the recordings of battle after battle where their ships died while the humans danced around them like ghosts. "We must adapt," Zorath had said finally, "or we must die. Those are our only choices." Some captains had refused. They had left his fleet and returned to the Empire, claiming that Zorath had lost his mind. But others had stayed. The ones who stayed were the ones who wanted to survive. For the first time in Velthari history, a fleet commander broke from tradition. Zorath ordered his ships to spread out. He told each captain to make independent decisions. He encouraged them to try new things, even if those things might fail. It felt wrong. It felt dangerous. It felt like falling without knowing where the ground was. But it was also exciting. The next engagement was different. The human fleet expected the same predictable patterns. Instead, they found Velthari ships moving in unexpected directions, firing at unexpected times, taking risks that the Velthari had never taken before. Commander Daniel Carter watched the battle from the Bridge of the Relentless. A smile spread across his face. Well, they're learning." Lieutenant Commander Mark Davis looked at the tactical display. 3 of our destroyers took damage. That hasn't happened since the first day." "Good," Daniel said. "Very good. This is exactly what I hoped for." "You wanted them to become more dangerous?" "I wanted them to become more interesting. A predictable enemy teaches you nothing. An adapting enemy makes you better." Daniel opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, this is Carter. The situation has changed. The Velthari are trying new tactics. Respond accordingly. This is no longer a basic exercise. Consider this advanced training." The human captains welcomed the challenge. They had been getting bored with easy victories. Now they had to think again. They had to improvise. They had to work for their wins. The battle was longer than previous engagements. The humans still won, but they lost 4 ships in the process. For the Velthari, this was a victory of sorts. They had proven that they could learn. High Commander Zorath received the battle report with mixed feelings. He had lost 23 ships, but he had also destroyed 4 human vessels. It was not much, but it was something. It was proof that change was possible. Lieutenant Jenny Ross was still in her holding cell when Sub-Commander Yelthy came to visit her. "Your fleet performed better today," Jenny said as Yelthy entered. "I'm guessing that was Zorath's doing?" Yelthy nodded slowly. "He ordered changes to our tactics. It is the first time any commander has done this in 300 years. Good for him. Seriously, that takes courage." Yelthy sat down across from the human prisoner. She studied Jenny's face with her 4 eyes. "You are not afraid of us." "Should I be? We conquered 17 star systems. We have destroyed civilizations." "Yes," Jenny agreed. "But you did that because those civilizations had forgotten how to fight. They had known peace for so long that they didn't know how to respond when war came. We're different. We never forgot. We couldn't forget even if we wanted to. It's in our nature." Yelthy was quiet for a moment. "Why do you fight so much?" "We have studied your history. War after war after war. It seems wasteful." Jenny thought about the question. "It is wasteful. We know that. We've tried to stop many times. But there's something in us that drives us to compete, to push, to test ourselves against others. When there are no external enemies, we turn on each other. It's not our best quality, but it has made us very good at survival." "You are dangerous," Yelthy said. "Yes, but we're also creative, and curious, and kind when we want to be. We're complicated." "The Empire is not complicated. We have rules, we follow them. It has worked for thousands of years." "Until now," Jenny pointed out gently. Yelthy looked away. "Until now." There was a long silence. Then Yelthy asked a question that surprised them both. "Do you think we can learn to be more like you?" Jenny smiled. Anyone can learn. That's the beautiful thing about intelligence. You're not stuck being what you were yesterday. You can grow, you can change, you can become something new. The Empire will not allow it. Then maybe the Empire needs to change too. Later that day, High Commander Zorath received a transmission from Admiral Patricia Walsh. He had been expecting demands, or threats, or mockery. Instead, he received an offer. Patricia appeared on his screen, looking calm and professional. Commander Zorath, I've been watching your fleet's performance today. I'm impressed. Zorath did not know how to respond to a compliment from his enemy. We are still losing. Yes, but you're losing differently. You're learning. That's more than any other species has done against you. Isn't it? Zorath was silent. I have a proposal, Patricia continued. We can keep fighting. We can destroy the rest of your fleet. We can teach your empire a painful lesson about underestimating humans. Or we can do something more productive. What do you propose? A ceasefire, a conversation, a chance for both of us to gain something from this situation beyond a body count. Zorath's first instinct was to refuse. Pride demanded it. Tradition demanded it. But pride and tradition had cost him over 500 ships. Pride and tradition had made his fleet predictable and vulnerable. What would we discuss? He asked carefully. The future. You have technology and knowledge of the galaxy that we lack. We have adaptability and creativity that your people desperately need. Maybe instead of trying to conquer each other, we could help each other. You would help your enemy? Patricia smiled. You're only our enemy because you chose to be. That choice can change. Everything can change, Commander. That's what humans understand better than anyone. Zorath thought about his fleet, his crews, his people back home in the Empire. He thought about the 17 star systems that had surrendered to Velthari power. He thought about how none of those conquests had made the Velthari stronger. They had just made them more arrogant. I will consider your proposal, he said finally. Take your time. Well, not too much time. We do have other things to do. Patricia winked at him. But I think you'll make the right choice. You've already proven that you can think for yourself. That's the hardest part. The transmission ended. Zorath sat alone in his quarters for a long time. He thought about the human pilot in his brig, about her calm confidence, about her willingness to teach even as a prisoner. He thought about Sub-Commander Yelthi, who had dared to question the old ways. He thought about his own captains, who had followed him into uncertainty because they trusted him more than they trusted tradition. And he thought about the future. Not the future that the Empire had planned for humanity, but a different future. A future where the Velthari learned and grew and changed. It was terrifying. It was also exciting. He opened a channel to Admiral Walsh. I accept your proposal. Let us talk. On the other end, Patricia smiled. I knew you would. Welcome to the first day of your new life, Commander. The next morning, Lieutenant Jenny Ross was released from her cell. Sub-Commander Yelthi personally escorted her to the shuttle bay. You were right, Yelthi said quietly. Anyone can learn. Jenny smiled. Remember that. It's the most important lesson there is. She boarded the shuttle and flew back to her fleet. Behind her, the Velthari fleet began to stand down. The war was not quite over, but it was transforming into something else. Something better. Aliens declare war, humans treat it as a training exercise. Part 5. The New Order. The war officially ended on the 23rd day. It was not a surrender in the traditional sense. The Velthari did not kneel before their conquerors. The humans did not demand tribute or territory. Instead, the two fleets gathered in neutral space and began to talk. High Commander Zorath transported to the Relentless for the first formal meeting. He expected hostility. He expected suspicion. Instead, he found something strange. The humans were friendly. They shook his manipulator appendages with their small, soft hands. They smiled and made jokes. They offered him food that smelled terrible, but that they seemed to enjoy. Commander Daniel Carter greeted him personally. "Welcome aboard, Commander. I hope the journey wasn't too uncomfortable." "I have traveled through war zones to reach enemy vessels before," Zorath replied. "This is the first time I was not fired upon during the journey." Daniel laughed. "Well, the war is over. No point shooting at friends. We are friends now? We're going to be. Give it time." Admiral Patricia Walsh arrived via video link from Earth. She looked tired but satisfied. "Commander Zorath, thank you for accepting our invitation. Thank you for extending it. I did not expect mercy from a species we tried to conquer." "It's not mercy," Patricia corrected gently. "It's investment. You have potential. Your people have strength and discipline. You just need to learn flexibility. We can help with that." The negotiations took 3 days. The terms were simple but revolutionary. First, the Velthari Empire would withdraw all claims on Earth and the human solar system. In exchange, humans would have free passage through Velthari space for trade and exploration. Second, the two civilizations would share technology and knowledge. The Velthari had star charts covering vast regions of space. The humans had tactical innovations that could make Velthari fleets much more effective. Third, and most importantly, they would establish joint training programs. Human instructors would teach at Velthari academies. Velthari observers would study at human military schools. The goal was to create something new, a partnership between two very different species. General Kevin Moore presented the treaty to the United Nations on Earth. The assembly hall was silent as he explained the terms. "What we achieved was not a conquest," Kevin said. "It was a conversion. We showed the Velthari that their old ways were holding them back. We gave them a reason to change, and in doing so, we gained an ally instead of an enemy." A diplomat raised her hand. "How can we trust them? They tried to enslave us." "Because trying and failing changed them," Kevin replied. "They learned something valuable from this war. They learned that adaptation matters more than tradition. They learned that strength alone is not enough. Those lessons will shape their civilization for generations, and we will be there to guide them." The treaty was approved unanimously. 6 months later, the first joint human Velthari military academy opened on a moon orbiting a gas giant in Velthari space. They called it New Dawn Academy. Lieutenant Amy Brooks was among the first human instructors assigned there. She had been promoted to captain after her service during the war. Now she stood in front of a classroom filled with young Velthari officers. They looked nervous. Their mandibles clicked rapidly. Their 4 eyes darted between Amy and their datapads. They had grown up believing that the Velthari way was the only way. Now they were being asked to unlearn everything they knew. Amy understood their fear. Change was hard for everyone. "The first thing I want you to understand," she began, "is that there are no permanent rules in combat. Every tactic can be countered. Every strategy can be defeated. The moment you believe you have found the perfect answer, you have already started to lose." A young officer raised his manipulator arm. "But how do we know what to do if there are no rules?" "You adapt, you observe, you think. You make the best decision you can with the information you have. And if that decision is wrong, you learn from it and do better next time." "What if we fail?" Amy smiled. "You will fail. Everyone fails. The goal is not to avoid failure. The goal is to survive failure and grow from it. That is how humans became strong. Not by winning every battle, but by learning from every loss." The Velthari students looked at each other. The idea was foreign to them. In their culture, failure was shame. But looking at the human instructor, so calm and confident, they began to wonder if perhaps they had been wrong about many things. Sub-Commander Yelty, who had requested a posting at the academy, sat in the back of the classroom. She had become one of the strongest advocates for human-Velthari cooperation. Her reports to the Empire had helped convince skeptical leaders that the new alliance was beneficial. After class, she approached Amy. "They are confused. Change is difficult for my people." "It's difficult for everyone," Amy agreed, "but it's also necessary. A species that stops changing stops growing. And a species that stops growing eventually dies. The humans never stopped changing. We couldn't afford to. We had too many enemies, including ourselves. Our history is full of terrible mistakes, wars and cruelties and failures. But each mistake taught us something. We became strong because we had to. We became adaptable because the alternative was extinction." Yelty was quiet for a moment. "We believed we were the strongest species in the galaxy. We believed we could conquer anyone. And now?" Yelty made a sound that Amy had learned to recognize as laughter. "Now we know that strength means nothing without wisdom. You taught us that. We are grateful." On Earth, Sergeant Ryan Cole had returned to normal duties. The war had earned him a promotion and several commendations, but he still preferred working with troops directly. He was assigned to train the next generation of human soldiers. Private Tony Martinez, no longer a private but now a sergeant himself, visited Ryan one afternoon. They sat in the base cafeteria and drank coffee while watching new recruits struggle through basic exercises. "Hard to believe it's only been 6 months, Tony said. "Feels like the war happened in another lifetime." Ryan nodded. "Funny thing about combat, it changes you, but life goes on. You have to find a way to carry what you learned without letting it weigh you down." "What did you learn?" Ryan thought about the question. "I learned that humans are special. Not because we're stronger or smarter than everyone else, but because we never give up. We adapt. We learn. We keep pushing forward no matter what. That's our real weapon." "You think we'll face other threats? Other species that want to conquer us?" "Probably. The galaxy is big. There are bound to be others out there, but now we have allies. And more importantly, we have proven that we can handle whatever comes our way. That's worth something." Tony smiled. "I hope the next aliens are more challenging." Ryan laughed. "Be careful what you wish for. But yeah, a little challenge keeps us sharp." Far away on the Velthari homeworld, High Commander Zorath had retired from military service. He spent his days writing about his experiences. His memoirs, titled The Lessons of Earth, became required reading for all Velthari officers. In the final chapter, he wrote something that surprised even himself. "We believed ourselves invincible because we had never lost. The humans taught us that true strength is not measured in victories, but in the ability to grow. They could have destroyed us. Instead, they chose to teach us. That choice, more than any weapon or tactic, showed me why they are destined to become the greatest species in the galaxy. They understand that building is harder than destroying, and that enemies can become allies if given the chance. I am grateful to them, not for sparing my fleet, but for showing me a better way to live. The Velthari Empire will never be the same, and that is a good thing." 1 year after the war ended, a ceremony was held at New Dawn Academy. Graduates from the first joint class received their certificates. Humans and Velthari stood together, no longer enemies, no longer strangers, partners. Captain Amy Brooks stood on the stage and looked out at the diverse crowd, humans with their soft skin and expressive faces, Velthari with their dark exoskeletons and multiple eyes, different in so many ways, similar in the ways that mattered. "Today is not an ending," she said. "It is a beginning. The galaxy is vast and full of mysteries. There will be challenges ahead that we cannot imagine, but together we can face anything, because we have learned the most important lesson of all." She paused and smiled. "We have learned how to grow. The audience rose and applauded. Humans clapped their hands. Velthari clicked their mandibles in approval. The sound was strange and beautiful, like two instruments playing the same song in different keys. In the back of the auditorium, Sub-Commander Yelthi watched with what could only be described as hope. 1 year ago, she had believed that the Velthari were the masters of the galaxy. Now she knew the truth. The masters of the galaxy were not the strongest or the oldest. They were the ones who could learn, the ones who could change, the ones who could turn enemies into friends. The humans had shown her people the way. Now they would walk that path together. The future was uncertain. The future was frightening. But the future was also full of possibilities. And that, Yelthi realized, was the most human lesson of all. The end.